love this little exercise. It was very revealing to me. And because we're talking about relationships, let's start with that. If you're willing, join me in a little self-inquiry and then also an embodiment of that. Remind yourself of previous relationships and your partners, or the sort of person you feel attracted to, the sort of person you tend to fall in love with or admire. And if that's a bit like, oh, at the moment, romantic relationships, who do you admire? It could be a famous person. It could be someone who's in the spotlight and you think, oh, they're fabulous. They're so great. And that could be another in. So bring them to mind. And especially with former relationships, it's an indicator if you notice that maybe your 3 previous partners all shared that one trait that you really loved, that you felt drawn to begin with. And I can say for myself, this is the best inquiry I do whenever I meet a person. I feel some sort of attraction. It doesn't need to be a sexual attraction. It could also be, personally, I'm heterosexual. I feel drawn to a woman. I'm like, oh, instead of going admiring, putting it out, and she's so great, and yeah, she's probably great. But also to turn it around and be like, what does that tell me about myself? So what is the trait that you can recall that a person has that you admire, or the kind of red thread that spans through all your previous, I don't know, all the people you fell in love with or felt attracted to? And it can change over time, obviously, but if you have that, maybe you want to share that in the chat as well. And then we can have a little harvest and clarity and presence, humor, clarity, innocence, communications, kindness, confidence. Yeah, beautiful. Super, yeah. Passion and intensity. Great. Strength and creativity. Lots of ideas. Yeah. And already in that little inquiry, can you see that you might discover a little longing for that quality or trait in yourself? Oh, I wish I was able to do that. Or you might actually have it yourself, but you haven't given it much room to express. So what I want to do with you now is to bring that into a little bit of movement. And you can do this sitting or standing. I'm going to pick, okay, the traits I generally feel drawn to and admire are like a sense of independence, confidence, sort of like a brightness. And I'm already doing it in my body now that I'm sharing that with you. So that's the invitation right now. I'm going to do it standing, and I hope you can then see me as well to demonstrate that. And if you want to do it with me standing, please get up, but you can also do it sitting if the quality that you chose is something that can be performed sitting. So for me, like I said, it's confidence. How in this very moment could I bring a bit more confidence into my own body? So, okay, I'm trying to be as neutral as I would stand right now. What would a little bit more of a confident posture look like? So for me, that's a raising of my chest, for instance. And maybe for those who are completely lost and you've never worked with the body, I can throw in a few more examples. If it's sensuality, for instance, like you're really drawn to kind of this flowy feminine, maybe start to bring a little bit of movement into your body, like this sort of swaying softness. If it's a certain assertive directness, forwardness, maybe you can bring your weight into a forwards direction. Maybe it's a soft, receptive kind, like backwards, kind of like a care, a hugging. How could you in your body take that? And maybe even less than that. Maybe that's too abstract. Copy that person you had in mind. How would they stand? How would they sit? Like for me, the confidence would be very much that uprightness, the sort of like, okay, here I am, a sort of bigness. And if I would even bring this into a walk, you can play with that. Be like this, yes, head up, like walking, being big, being willing to be seen, but also solid in myself. There's no seeking for anything out there. It's like I feel the connection to the ground and also the uprightness. play with that a little bit and allow yourself to dial that up, whatever the quality is. If it's humor, maybe it's a bit like loosening up and shaking it out, and maybe pulling a few faces that loosen and shakes things up so you can actually let that creativity, the humor come through, and like, don't really give a shit, and like, you know, pull a joke and like, yeah, and be a bit loose and relaxed, but with the quality you've chosen that you feel drawn to. So I'll give you like a minute or two to dial it up. So stand a little bit more like them, like that person you admire, that person you feel drawn to. Walk a little bit more. What would they say? How do they speak? How do they breathe? Where? Which part of the body? Dialing it up even a bit more, like exaggerating it almost to a comic degree. Like, I'm so confident. Like, you can exaggerate it. Like, oh, yes, here I am. And like, I'm super solid in myself. That would be my example, but stick with your own. Like, how can you be really juicy and sensual? That is what you're working with. How can you be really silly or like humorous or relaxed and loose and like, yeah, everything's cool. I got this friend who's like got that sort of attitude to life. He's like, oh, no problem, you know, and I admire it. All right. So from that exaggeration, let's dial it back down a little bit again and see if you can, almost like a suit that you're putting on, like a whole body suit, kind of wear this way of being, this embodiment. Can you dial it down and make it your own, like a second skin, part of yourself? Dialing it back down to be more and more blending with your own way of being. How much of this, like, you know, putting a bit of spice into a soup, how much of this can you put in that feels good and feels like, yeah, this could be me in this as well? All the way from the exaggeration back into, and I'm going to sit back down again, all the way into that tiny little expression of that. So in my case, embodying confidence in that moment would be more of an upright spine. And you might actually try to give it some words of what you've noticed in your body. What did you do with your body? Because we worked from an abstract level of qualities. Okay. And maybe you want to share that in the chat once again. What are the actual physical things that you did? Was it like, oh, leaning back? I gave some cues, but maybe you found some completely different ones that were more fitting for the quality you want to embody. Shoulders back a bit. Yeah. That could also help to kind of be more open or confident, or yeah, a straighter spine is for me very much one thing I did. Chin up was another thing for me I noticed I did. And we can even go to the level of like, where would you look? What's the focus with your eyes? I mentioned the breath, for instance. And we can take this way, 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 way further. And this is more like a crutch. Taking another person, taking someone that we admire and sort of project onto, and then imitating them to integrate by means of copying and exaggeration. And then dialing it back down to make it just enough that feels it's still us, that feels suitable. Open chest, straight. And it's really, really helpful to also disconnect that, because we started from the abstract. We started from that it's identified with a person we know or we know of, to like the quality, to the actual physical shifts we made in our own bodies. And this is something you can take away and practice. This is something very concrete, that beyond the inquiry, whenever you're faced with a situation where you're like, oh my God, they're so amazing, to go like, oh, what is it about them? That's the inquiry bit. Oh, and how could I have a little bit more of that myself, or allow myself to express a little bit more of this? And the embodied bit of it and the full body way of doing it, and you can really dial it up, like all the way, like I'm kind of playing the music real loud and then dialing it back down to an enjoyable level, is really copying whatever you think or however it would express in walking, in sitting, in speaking. And then you do that for a little bit of time, and you could repeatedly do that. You could make it your practice. Oh, wow, I really notice confidence is a thing I apparently want to integrate or have more of. Or, yeah, or essentiality is something I want more of. How can I create little pockets of time in my day to do that? On my way to work, going for a walk in the park, can I walk like that person I admire? And I had a very dear, dear friend that did that. She actually played with that really extensively. And she had this like, oh, I'm always feeling drawn to these guys, and they have, I don't remember the exact quality that it was, but they had a certain quality, and she started walking like them. She started copying them for a period of time. And after a few weeks, she was like, I'm noticing something different in me. I'm noticing a shift. What's going on here? And then even longer down the line, her preferences or her choice of partner, or her choice, I'm phrasing it as a choice, changed. The people she was drawn to changed. And that's indicative for me. What we're drawn to often says more about what we're seeking to integrate in our own being. So if you do a lot of work, and if you do a lot of reflection work and integration work, this might shift who you're drawn to. This might shift how you perceive the world around you, for sure. And also the people you engage with and how you engage with them.